Hi guys, Miguel from Toddle here. So today I want to talk about how we can use variables to organize information in different ways, and how a bunch of handy functions like map can help us then transform that information and access it in different parts of our application. Our example is going to be super simple, a shopping cart that you have a list of items that you can add to your basket, and then a list as a final checkout where you can change the amounts and make the final purchase. The idea is going to be super simple. Have two variables, one for items and one for the shopping cart, and then use these functions to combine them. So let's jump right into it. So our boilerplate is going to be this one, super simple. We have a list of items represented by these lovely emojis. Each item has a title, has a price, has a button to add to cart, and we can scroll to see more emojis here. And the idea would be, once you click on this button, it would add the item to a list, a shopping list, that then you can access here. That shopping list will give us all the items that we add to it, and it's going to give us a final price based on the amount of each item. So if you go back to our project, a few things. So first of all, if you look here to the right, the way I thought I would structure something like this would be have one item that contains all the possible items for sale here on the list, and then I have another variable that contains the ones that are on the shopping cart. But because it's a good practice that you don't have information duplicated, what we're going to do is we want the items on this card to reference the ones that live on this data object. So we can start right into it. I'm not going to go through like the structure of the HTML here. It's pretty simple. We have a header with a title, and then this is a flex box with a bunch of items that are repeating. I set it off to wrap and the distance between them. Yeah, that's how we create this list. So I'm not going to go through that. I'm going to focus more like how we're going to achieve this with this kind of logic. So let's start by seeing like how I populate this this bunch of items here. This is all coming from this data object, and if you look at it, let me make it bigger. Basically, it's an array with a bunch of items inside. And what I did is to make sure that all the items have exactly the same information, so then I know exactly what I'm looking for. I create a formula that represents one single item. This formula, as you guys can see, has a name, has an image, has a price, and has a product ID. The product ID is what's gonna help us make sure that that item is unique, and all the other ones are self-explanatory, of course. And then each one of them is connected to a property that can be passed to this little function. Then to create the data object here, what I do, it's an array, and each entry of this array has one of these items, and I just fill like all the properties that it's required in each one of them. So let's start by creating this add to cart item. Just to show you guys how it is right now, the cart is an array as well, but so far it's empty. I did create as well, to give a bit of structure, item cart. This item, what it takes is an amount that is going to be the amount of those items that we want to add to that object, an ID, a price, and a total value. That is going to be the multiplication of the price and the amount. And the idea is that we're going to get all this data from our data or variable, and populate the basket with that. So let's start it by adding these items to the cart. The idea is when you press the button here, you'll add this item to the cart. A normal behavior would be something like this, and let's test it out here. So when I click, I want to update the cart variable with, and let's make this full screen. So I want to update the cart variable with, let me actually make a refresh here because it has some information. Yeah, it's fine. It had some information stored in memory, so it was showing a few items on the array. Now it's correct, it's empty. So first things first, I want to point it out that this visual interface of Toddle, it's super useful to understand what's going on and what kind of like transformations we are doing. So right now we can see we have the card, and if you look at the output, it's empty, there's nothing there. And what we want to do is to append to this card. Append is a function that allows us to add an item to an array. Append the item that we are selecting, basically. One option would be to click here the item, and it's going to pass all the information that it has on the item. As you can see here, now we have an array with one item, and this item has the name, has the image, has the price, has the product ID. All good with this approach, nothing wrong, but we said at the beginning that we want to use a few functions to pass just the information that we need. And as I showed at the beginning as well, we have this formula that we created to pass an object to the shopping cart. And this is the type of structure that we want to have in all items in the shopping cart. So what we're going to do is, instead of passing, go back to it, instead of appending the whole item, we're going to append the cart item. And this item, it's an item that just has these properties that we defined. Right now they are all null, but we can pick them up from the item that we are that it's being added to the cart. So the item name, it's going to be equal to the item name. The amount is going to be actually we don't have the amount on the properties, so the amount is going to be 1. The ID, it's going to be the product ID, and the price, it's going to be the item price. And now we can see that it's passing an item that has the amount, the ID, the price, and the total value. We can go back and test it out. To test it out, we need to visualize it somehow that this item is being added to the card. So let me move this one here. I have basically on the HTML, I have this panel that has the grid with all the elements, and I created another panel that should display the items in the card. And the idea at the end is when you click, you switch between both of them. I force it to be invisible now, but let's remove that. As you guys can see, it's here. And the idea is that this item here is repeated based on the card item. Right now we went away because you don't have yet any items on the card, but if you test it out, we can see that 1 item, 2 items, 3 items. It's adding more and more items to the page. So now let's focus here on this card. So we have this button here, and I have actually this div. This one has the text on the left, this one has the button on the right, but I have another button hidden here that I'm going to remove this logic. And the idea is once you add that item to the card, this button goes away and this one becomes visible, and you can change the amount of items. So to build that logic, we're going to use a map function. First of all, and like although I like to have like this card variable empty when the project is finished, while I'm working in the project, is a good practice to just add a few elements here so you have something to play with. Otherwise you're not going to have any information to play with. So let's start by doing that. Let's add 3 entries, and use this formula that we create. The name doesn't matter for now. The amount, we can make one. What is important is actually the ID. Let's make ID 1. And actually, if you delete this and now just add a few more, it copies the information. So let's change the IDs, ID 2, ID 3. The amount, let's leave 1 for all of them. Why is the ID important? Because we're gonna try to find items on that card array based on their ID. So I want to make sure that we have these IDs that we are using here are somehow replicated there as well. So let's start with this button here. What we want to do is, once it's to show it if that ID exists on the card variable. So to do that, let's click the card variable, and we are getting an array with all the entries now, and we can see we have the ID 1, 2, and 3. And what we want to do is first of all simplify all this information, because right now we are getting an array with 3 entries, but then inside each one of them we have amount, ID, price, all that stuff. It's too complicated. Let's simplify it. How can we simplify that? Well, we can use a map function. What the map function does is getting an array as the input, and then you can select which property inside you want to map to another array, and have an array just with that. So in this case we want the IDs, and as we can see here in the output now, instead of having all that information, we only have an array with all the IDs existing in a project. I can actually come here and, for instance, to the card, and I'm gonna change the ID of the first one so you can see it to like big number, 100. And now if I come here again, we can see here that that ID is passed as well. So let me just revert that, so otherwise I'm gonna forget about it. Great. So what we want to do is show this button here if the, let me see, maybe it's easier like that. So we want to show this button if the ID of this emoji appears on this array. So now that we have already the array with all the IDs, we can use another function called include and pass the item product ID. So now what it's going to do, it's going to check if each of that item are included in that array. In this case it's true, so it's going to evaluate to true. What it's going to do, if it evaluates to true, it's going to show the button. We don't want that, like if the item is there, we want it to hide the button. So simple fix, just come here and say that actually we want exactly the opposite of this. And now you can see the first 3 items that we had, the 1, 2, and 3, the button is hidden, but the 4th, because it doesn't exist in this array, it shows the button. Let's come here to our button, grab this logic, and we can do it so by copy the last element and add it to this one. Just add something here and paste, but remove the not. So it does exactly the opposite. And now, as you can see, if it has an item, it shows there, otherwise it doesn't. The reason it's 0 here, it's because we haven't connected that yet. So now that we have this logic build, let's actually fix this one here so we see it in action. Once you add the item to the card, it updates this value here, and if you keep adding more items, it keeps adding them, or if you remove them, it decreases the number of items. So to do that, let's select this one here, and let's click here. And let's see how we can achieve that. So we want to have this card item and check if this ID exists, and if so, I want to get this amount here. So to do that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna map the IDs once again, so I have all the IDs, and I'm gonna use a function called index of that finds the index of a specific element, and I'm gonna use as an input to find the index this product ID. So if I remove it here to see it again, right now we are getting an array with these 3 items. And if I add this, and for instance the item with ID 1, it says that is in the 0 index position. And with that I can access that item and change that value. So let's add here let's do data card. Sorry, let's make it like this. I copy them. So card get, the path is gonna be the one that we just did, so map this out, find the item, bam, it's gonna give us just the entry that of that specific one, and then we're gonna get the amount. And if all of this works fine, yes, it's there. And now that we have this this value working, let's create a logic for these buttons. So when you click here, it adds, and when you click here, it subtracts. One of the things that we're going to do a lot during this project is try to find an element position inside the array, the card array, and an element index. So to simplify that, let's create a function that you can reuse throughout the project. So that function is going to be this one, and we're going to call it get item index, and once again it's going to have our card. It's going to map the item IDs, and we're going to find the index of, and here we're going to pass it an input. Let's call it ID. Test value, let's use 2. So here I want the ID, and it's going to pass me the index of that ID. Great, so now we can go here and click this button. Let's start with this one. Let's erase whatever it was here. So on click, I want to set card to, let's make it bigger. So I want card, that right now it's these ones, and I want to use the function that we just created. Call it how did we call it? Get item index. And actually we already have the card function inside the get item index, so we only need to pass here the item product ID, and it's going to give us the index. It's 0. So we want, actually, let's remove this. Let's do card. We want to set the, here is the one that get item index, and set to this one. And now we're going to copy this function again, because actually we want, let's put it like here. Okay, so what's going on here is like this function just gives us the index, but actually in this case we want the index first, and then we want the whole object. So let's create here another function. Let's make this big. Let's call it, the other one we call it get item index. Let's call get item object, and that function is gonna, based on the card, we want to find. There's a function called find that helps us search through an array of items and apply a formula to check if that item exists or not, and if so, it's going to give us that item back. So I want to find. It needs some kind of formula here, so I want, actually not this, but I want equals. I want to find an ID, an item that has the ID equal to the ID that I'm passing here. This can look a bit confusing, but will make sense in a second. And this one is going to be ID. What is that? Item. Wait. Parent ID here. So I'm passing an ID here. This one. So I'm passing an ID and I'm looking for the specific item ID. If that ID is the same, then it's going to give us not the full array, but just that one as an output. Let's try it out. So going back here, we were having we have the card object that we are setting the one that has the same product ID as the one in the list, and I want to set it, instead of setting to 0, I want to set that to get item object, and now we're setting exactly to the same value that it was before. So now, very simply, I can just click set the amount to actually this. Let's put it like that, and let's get just the amount, not the full object, just to understand that what's going on here. I'm getting this whole object. I'm finding the one with the ID of the one that I want. I'm getting this whole object and pass it to that ID, and then I want to set the amount to, right now I'm setting it to the whole object again, so you can see it's duplicated here. No, I want to set the amount to this get amount, and I'm going to add 1. You can see amount 1, amount 1, amount 1, and this one has the amount 2. It can be a little confusing, but if you ignore these big chunks here, it all makes sense. So let's try it out. It's adding to that one, it's adding to this one, and so on, so on. Great. So let's repeat the whole process, but for this one here. So what I'm going to do is here on click, I want to, let me just copy the whole thing, or actually let's do it from 0, so we get a bit more used to this kind of logic. So here on click, I want to set the card to open, so I want to card, I want to set, I want the index of this ID, and I want to set that to the object with the same ID. I want the object with this ID, and set that to and set the amount on that to the current amount minus 1. And now if we go here, let's try it out. 9, 10, and it's decreasing. Great, everything is working. So now that this is working, let's focus here on this one here. So on this one, I'm repeating this item, let's start populating these fields here. So first of all, this one I wanted to show the item image. I don't have the item image, but I can use the ID to get there. So I want to get this data. I want to find the product ID that is the same as my product ID, and from that one I want to get the image, and there we go. And now the image is there. For the line here, I actually just pass it. I'm getting it from I'm having a function to get that in exactly the same way as I just did. That's fine. Here let's do the same for the price. So I will actually pass the price to that object, so I can just come here to the price. For some reason it's undefined because when I created here this sample data, I didn't add prices to this. So yeah, now there's something there. Yeah, it's working. So now that this is done, let's focus on building this part here. So first of all, remember that this part here is based on this data, and this one is based on that data, so it's not exactly the same structure. So on this one, what we want is, once you click, you add to this number. Once you click here, we take out of that number. So when you click, we want to set the card to, let's make it bigger. So we want to set the card. We want to set the current index, and let's open it to see what's happening, to the current item. But we want, inside that item, we want to set the amount to the item amount plus 1. And we can see here that something is not, oh, I don't want the index here, I want the item, the full item. So yeah, like that. And on this one, it's the opposite. So I want the card to be updated based on, I want this card to set the index of the current item and set the amount to the item amount minus 1. This should work as well. So let's test it out. So if I click here, it's adding, perfect. And if I click here, it's adding as well. Oh, none of the other ones is interfering, so great. And I want to do something with this one too. Let's add a bit more logic here, that let's make an if statement. If the item amount it's less than, and we can put here 2. And the reason why I'm putting here 2, it's because if the item is 1, when you click, actually let's put it 1. It gets a bit more readable. But what I want to do here is check if that number it's 1, because if it's 1 and I remove an item, I want the item to disappear out of the list. So let's make it if the number is less than 2, I want to something happens, otherwise let's just put something here as a placeholder. Otherwise I want this to happen. So if that evaluates to false, I want this to happen. If not, let's clean this one here, and I want to the card to delete the current index. Let's see if this works. So now let's test it. Adding items, I'm removing items, and when I get to Z1, if I click here, it goes away. Great, it's working. So now most of the stuff is done, only a few things missing. First of all, like the logic to create this one here. Let me replicate it again. So what I want here is to concatenate this here. Let's make a $sign, and what I want to put here, it's the item price multiplied by the item amount, and this should work. Great. What else can we do here? I have close to this button, I have another one that it's hidden, this one here. Let's remove this logic, and I have another hidden button here as well, so let's remove the logic for that one too. So now most of the logic is done. What is missing is just connect all these things. I revealed a few other buttons that I had hidden on the interface, and the idea is pretty simple. You have this grid, you add items. Once you are happy, you click checkout, and then you go to a page that you see this list with a sum of all the items and the total value of all of them, and you have a button to go back to this list here. So to create that logic, let's create another variable. Let's call it checkout panel, and let's make this false by default, and let's add the logic here. So this one is visible if checkout panel is the opposite of the checkout panel. It's visible here, and once the checkout panel is visible, the other one goes away. Yeah, great. And now the same goes here. This is only visible if this is visible, and the same one goes here. And this one as well is only visible if the checkout panel. I'm gonna add not to be the other way around. Great. And I add a style to this button as well, with add items, that gets blue if it has items to it. Let me check here. So I have call has items, so is only if this size is greater than 0. Okay, great. So if you test it now, okay, you forgot the logic there to remove. Let's do that quickly. We actually add that somewhere else, but let's make it here. If this one and let me get amount it's less than 1, you do that, otherwise you do this, and let's just paste this on here, otherwise you gonna delete the get item index. I'm gonna delete this one. I think this will work. Let's test it out. It's adding. Yeah, great. It's once again like the other one. We need to add 2 here, otherwise the 0 counts as well. And now it should be working. Yeah, perfect. So let's add what is missing. This button here, we wanted to click, we want to set this to true. Here, this button, when it clicks, we want to set this to false. And let's test it out. So bam, 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 check out, all the items are here, all working. This goes back, great. The only thing missing is to update the items here at the end too. So let's do that now. So this one, let's copy this actually, and I already have it here, but let's do it again. I want to duplicate this, so I want to duplicate this. Wait, not easy to select just that. This goes away. This goes away. This is 0, this is 0, and this is like this. Perfect. So here I want to the card, and I want to map. Let's make it bigger so everyone can see. I want to map the amount, and what it's going to do, it's going to give me an array with all the amounts. And now I want to sum all of those values. And here I want to do the same on the card. I want to map I want to map the price. I want to map actually the total value. The card map total value for each one of them. And I want to sum that too. And now if you look, yeah, it's working. So final test, if I add emojis here, it adds there to the list. If I click here, it goes back. If I go all the way here, deletes them. It works. This one's here that it's hidden too. And if I go here, it's like that. So that's it for today. I hope you guys had fun. The idea here was to build a quick example to understand how we can use multiple variables and these functions like map, exclude, include, find, index of, to combine those variables and get the information that we need. Hope you guys had a lot of fun, and see you around in the next one. Bye.